Good evening, everyone. On behalf of our secure planning strategy teams, my name is Eleanor Ho. I would like to welcome everyone to attend our cybersecurity webinar. Cybersecurity is a very important and serious subject for us because I'm sure that every one of you received some junk emails or spam phone calls every day. I got 3 today so far. So I think it's very important for us to pay extra attention to that because it can cost a lot of the money to the individuals, to companies, and you have to spend a lot of the time to fix the problem, and then it can cause a lot of the emotional stress. So as secure planning strategies, we have hired IT professionals to help us to protect our clients' data, but we also, all the staff are going through the training on a weekly basis to make sure we are doing our very best to protect all our clients' data. But what about on the client side? This is what the purpose for this evening's webinar is about, because we want to make sure that our clients are protected as well. Tonight is our great honor to have our dear friend and business partner, Mr. Duncan McGovey, who helped us to invite Steve McNally, representing Prudential, to help us to be our guest speaker. So let me pass the control and the mics to Duncan. Thank you, Duncan.
Thank you, Eleanor. Thank you very much for including us. And thanks to everybody on the secure planning team, Wesley, Mihal, Liz, the entire group. Eleanor, thank you very much. We've had a 30-plus year relationship with your team, and we are greatly appreciative of the opportunity to do business with you and your clients, but also to bring special content as we have this evening with Steve McNally. As Eleanor mentioned, this is a huge challenge in our world today. It is significantly on the increase, and you'll hear some statistics from Steve. We all know that it is of great magnitude, but it is increasing in magnitude literally on a daily basis. I was at a major broker-dealer conference recently, and they were talking about the amount of money that they're spending on cybersecurity firewalls, and the number was $87 million a year. So again, the broker-dealer that Secure Planning is affiliated with does a phenomenal job of firewalling. The team at Secure Planning Strategies does a great job firewalling. But what they said at the conference, and this was a national specialist speaking to the audience, he said, but it just continues to trickle down from the biggest corporations and hospitals and government entities and all of the blackmails that we hear about. And it's going right down to an individual participant and household level. Foreign powers, in many cases, have a farm industry of this. So very serious, clandestine, very dangerous attacks. This isn't just a couple of hackers in a basement somewhere. This isn't just some people in Eastern Europe that may have deceivious goals in penetrating U.S. consumers' accounts. This is a global phenomenon that is organized and well-funded to go after you, your privacy, your security, and your financial assets. So it is with great pleasure that we have the opportunity this evening to have Steve McNally. Steve is joining us from Philadelphia. I think the rest of us on the screen at least are here in Michigan, and what a beautiful day it's been. Spring has sprung out in Philly also, so thank goodness that real old school winter that we just had around here hopefully is in the rearview mirror. Spring is coming. So we really appreciate you joining us in the evening. I know it's been a long day for everybody, and now the weather's so nice. There's lots of places you can be, but with the large RSVP count, it really speaks volume about how serious you take this and how much you trust your financial advisors to help guide you, not only in what they can do, but what you can do. So Steve McNally is going to take a half an hour or so. He's going to go through strategies and ways to identify potential challenges, ways to block those, and ways to prevent those on a go-forward basis. He's got some very creative things. You might want to have your cell phone handy. I think he's going to give you a couple of fun tips there. We do that in a lot of our advisor education programs. So if you have your cell phone within arm's reach, you might want to grab it because I think you're going to want to follow along with Steve. There'll be some things that might surprise you, might concern you, but you'll be happy to know about them because we didn't know them before Steve got started. There is an opportunity for Q&A throughout the session. So there is a chat box. Please feel free to put questions in there as we go through. And then near the end of the program, Wesley Ho will come back on, and Wes will read through a number of the questions and answers, time permitting, and we will wrap the program up within about an hour. So thank you again for joining us. For those of you that are Prudential clients, thank you for the trust and faith that you put in Prudential. We take that extremely seriously, and hopefully we are meeting. Our goal is to exceed expectations. And thank you for the recommendations that the team at Strategic Planning does when they think a Prudential solution might be appropriate. We're certainly not the only solution they have, but we do appreciate the opportunity to provide world-class retirement planning solutions in unique ways. And again, you have a world-class financial advisory team to select which options from their full bench of providers to provide those unique solutions. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve McNally. Steve, thank you very much for joining us. Steve has been at Prudential for just over a decade. He is an industry 20-year veteran. He is the head of the technology and cybersecurity team in our advanced planning group at Prudential. I believe that many of you joined us earlier in the year for Brandon Buckingham's kickoff meeting. Brandon is also in the advanced planning, but more on the tax and estate planning side. One of the things that we pride ourselves on at Prudential, whether it's related to our advisors, education, or directly to the end consumer like this evening, is a world-class series of experts above and beyond what we believe anyone else in the business brings. And Steve McNally certainly is a lead provider of that in advanced planning, in technology, in cybersecurity, and in credit protection strategies. So with no further ado, I'd like to turn it over to our great friend and business partner, Mr. Steve McNally.
Thank you, Duncan. It's not often I get such a wonderful introduction like that one, and especially a roundup of exactly what our team does. As I'm sure many of you know, my boss, Brendan Buckingham, excellent individual, incredibly smart. We have a great team over here at our advanced planning at Prudential. And of course, want to echo Duncan's comments. A huge thank you to Secure Planning for the partnership from Prudential and to have the opportunity to have Prudential come on myself to discuss such a very hot topic in the industry right now. It's identity theft. And just to kind of give you a gist of what we'll go through today, right? Identity theft is something that we often don't hear about until it's too late, right? When we think about identity theft, we hear about it in the news because it's affected somebody, or we've heard it's affected somebody that we love or are close to. It's not often we get to be a part of seminars or any type of educational forum where we're educated on what we need to do before identity theft ever even happens. So what I want to do with you all real briefly is I'm going to share my screen. I've got a great presentation planned here for us today. It's our hidden risk presentation. And just to echo, like I said, some of Duncan's comments, this is by far, ladies and gentlemen, our most popular presentation, right? A lot of the reason is because of how frequently you're hearing about it and how little you hear about it before it actually happens. So what we've done here at Advanced Planning is we've really taken all the resources and research we possibly could find to put together a presentation to help you all get an understanding of the actual risk it plays in your lives, but not just the risk, how to actively defend yourself from it, right? We want to talk about all the things you should know about identity theft, but also how you should be securing your identity as well too. So what I want to do here is just to start off with a brief agenda of what we'll be discussing today. First and foremost, we're going to talk about that hidden risk, right? That thing that we don't often think about until it's too late, right? We'll talk about the planning and the protection, especially approaching into retirement. We'll talk about the data disaster we're currently living in and how much of that is actually within our control, just to give you all an idea of what identity theft looks like today and what it might look like going forward. But of course, I say this every time I do the presentation, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a doom and gloom presentation, right? This is designed to educate you all on three specific things. First and foremost, we want to talk about what you should know about identity theft, right? What should you know is already out there or just about identity theft in general. We also want to talk about some things you should be monitoring, right? Some of these things you should be keeping an eye out for, but what I find is a lot of people don't realize how many things are out there that you should be keeping an eye out for. And lastly, if you've done everything we've talked about in this presentation today and your identity was still taken, and even if it wasn't, we'll talk about ways that you can actively continue to defend yourself or do so just in the way that you stand today. So to start things off, I've always understood stories to be the best from the beginning. We'll just start off as the once upon a time, right? The easy road to retirement. It's pretty simple stuff, right? We start off approaching retirement with first and foremost earning a wage, right? We go out, we get a job, we start making some money, and hopefully after we've made enough money, we can start to save some of that, right? Start putting in that into an emergency fund. And once that's built up, then we can actually take some of those additional assets and invest them. Now, once all those three stages are done, retirement comes. It's time to turn all of that money into a stream of income. And that's essentially it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the easy road to retirement. But obviously, you all know we're missing a number of things, right? It's not that easy. There are plenty of speed bumps that we hit on the way there. And in fact, what we did is we found 10 of the most common financial concerns from clients like yourselves. First and foremost, one of them being inflation. We know over the past few years, inflation has been a huge topic of discussion, how to overcome it, how to make sure it's not shrinking your assets. We also talk about housing costs, and recession is a big word used in a lot of the conversations we're having when approaching retirement. Even things like healthcare costs, interest rates, right? These are all things that can affect our portfolios negatively or positively in some circumstances that we are constantly talking to our advisors about. And several others considering taxes, job security, salary, right? These are all topics that you have all admitted to saying, hey, these are things that I want to talk about. These are things that I'm concerned about. These are the risks I want to find ways to make a better way out of. But a lot of the time, what we miss is the hidden risk, right? The aha moment of today's presentation. The hidden risk is fraud, ladies and gentlemen. It's not often enough that we're talking about fraud or identity theft or cybersecurity in our road to retirement. It's a lot of those previous topics, but what I want to do here is emphasize to you how important this risk is. First and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, identity theft is affecting 1 in every 3 Americans. In fact, 9 million identities are stole annually. And if you were to look at, we'll take identity theft out of it for a second. If you just looked at a recession, right? It's a hot topic when approaching retirement. The likelihood of you actually investing in a year that there is a recession, there's really only a 15% chance. Now, I emphasize that because think about you're more at risk here, right? 1 in 3 Americans being affected by identity theft or a 15% chance you invest in a recession. We spend all of our times focusing on our asset itself. We don't spend enough time thinking about how people can get access to those assets who aren't actually us, right? What we find is a much more risk that you're likely to fall into is identity theft. Right. So we want to emphasize today just that hidden risk, that fraud, the identity theft is a very real thing. And what we'll come to find is it's not really just a matter of if it happens, it's more likely a matter of when it will happen. And to give you an idea of exactly the data that we're pulling for, I'll move to the slide, which is the record-setting data breaches that we've seen over the past 2 decades, right? This chart starts back in 2005. It goes out to 2023. And what I want you all to pay attention to is that dark blue line right in the middle there that you're seeing kind of flat, bumpy a little bit, but it starts to spike up right around 2020. What this chart is showing you is the number of data breaches that has happened over the past few years. And what you'll notice is right by 2020 is when that number really starts to spike up. Now, if any of us remember what was happening in 2020, right? COVID happened. We all were moving back to our houses. Some of us were working from home. We couldn't go out and visit our family members. A lot of people were getting used to FaceTiming people or getting onto social media in order to keep up to date with what's happening in their friends and their families' lives, right? So what was happening is with our consistent exposure to the online atmosphere, these criminals were adapting and finding better ways to get these data breaches or get our identity. Now, a staggering statistic about this, ladies and gentlemen, is the two industries that are most heavily impacted by data breaches are the financial industry and the healthcare industry. Right? Think about the two main industries you're worried about when walking into retirement. It's your finances and it's your health, right? So to find out that majority of these data breaches are affecting the two industries that we're worried about the most can be a pretty frightening thing. Now, if you're looking at this slide and you're saying, great, 3,205 data breaches in 2023, I still feel like I'm safe enough. I don't think that I was affected by any of this. What I can tell you is we actually cherry picked two of these data breaches, and they're right here on the slide here. We'll talk about Equifax in 2017 first, right? Maybe some of you have heard about this data breach. Over 145 million individuals affected by this one, with their names, addresses, date of births, even social security numbers being breached. And just when we thought that that was the worst it could get, 7 years later comes by and the national public data has a data breach affecting over 272 billion people. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with national public data, it's an organization that compiles all the information it can on us as individuals. This is the organization that when you apply for a new job and they go to do a background check, they go to national public data to find out information on you. So this is a hive of personal information that was breached back in 2024. And what we found is not only name, address, phone number, email were given out, but also 2.9 billion social security numbers. Now, that takes into account both the UK, Canada, and the United States of America, but 2.9 billion social security numbers. If you thought back on that last slide that you were safe, I would challenge you to look at this number and ask yourself the same question, right? It's not a matter if it's going to happen to me. It's really a matter of when it's going to happen to me. And what's really frustrating about this, ladies and gentlemen, is a lot of this information is very cheap. For the same price of a cup of coffee, a criminal could go onto the black market and purchase your social security number. Right? They have the ability to get access to your information at a very low cost. And we look at these companies and we get frustrated because we think, hey, these guys are supposed to be protecting our data. They're supposed to be protecting my information. Why am I being a result of the downside of this when it's really the company that was the result of the data breach? Well, what we actually come to find out is, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, identity theft is actually mostly within our control. In fact, 74% of data breaches are our own faults. Now, we don't share this statistic with you to make you feel silly or to feel foolish about mistakes you've made. We share this statistics because it emphasizes how little we know about identity theft. It's constantly evolving. Duncan mentioned before this, right? There are several people around the world. This is their career, right? You and I go to our jobs every day. These people build careers on trying to steal people's identity. They have the time, but they also have the time to perfect their craft. So as we get better at securing our identities, they're also getting better at overriding a lot of those firewalls. Right. So it's simply just, we just don't know enough. And a lot of it has to do with the evolution of the craft, right? Robocalls, phishing scams. Social media is still relatively a brand new thing to people. Email, text messages, right? These are all platforms that these criminals are getting craftier with in order to override those firewalls and get us to make those silly mistakes. And the fact of the matter is it's not just affecting one group of people, ladies and gentlemen. It's affecting everybody, right? You have really a lifetime of risk from the moment you're born until the moment you pass away. There are several different types of ways that these criminals are getting in touch with your data, or at least trying to scam you, right? When we think about the elder generations, a lot of them have to do with Social Security fraud, Medicare fraud, lottery fraud in some cases. Those middle generations, investment fraud, tax fraud, asset fraud, or even going down to children, right, where they're creating new accounts with children's identities and synthetic identity theft, right? They're really learning to tailor Just like a salesperson were to their client, these criminals are learning to tailor their craft towards their specific audience. Now, this usually comes as a surprise to people. People typically think that it's usually the older generations that are most at risk and usually fall for these tricks more often than not. But what you might find surprising is who is most likely to be a victim? It's the ages from 30 to 39. These are the most common victims. There are far more scams out there occurring for this age range, and right behind them is 40 to 49-year-olds. It doesn't get until about the third group that those elderly individuals are having issues with identity theft. Now, just because these are the most popular groups doesn't mean that everybody can't be affected, right? A lot of these criminals are looking at individuals with higher incomes, right? For those folks who are making over $75,000 a year, you're more likely to become a victim. And a simple analogy to explain this is if you were a miner, would you go to an area where you weren't able to mine as much gold, or would you go somewhere where you knew there was a lot of gold, right? You would go to that place where there was a lot of resources. That's what these criminals are doing. They're finding people who have enough assets that they can steal or affect negatively in the future. Another staggering statistic, and we'll touch more on it throughout this presentation, is social media activity. The more often and more frequent that you use social media, the more likely you are to become a victim. And we're seeing that, right? This is a huge rush for people to get onto social media and share the things that they love to do. The more that you do that, right, it's the more information you're offering to the rest of the world. Now, unfortunately, the most staggering statistic of all of this information, one that I find personally very frustrating, is that children are 10 times more likely to be targeted for identity theft than anybody else. The reason that is, ladies and gentlemen, is if you think about a child who's 5 years old, for example, when do you think the first time they're ever going to need a credit check is? More often than not, it's not until they get to college, right? They eventually graduate high school, they apply to colleges, they're applying for college student loans, right? So if you have a 5-year-old child whose identity you've stolen, they might not even notice it until they turn 18 when they're applying for those student loans, right? Because there's no reason for them in that age range to do any type of credit checks. Right? So if your child's 5 years old and they don't find out anything until they're 18, that is 13 years of identity theft I can use just out of one person. And that's the reason why children are being targeted far more than others. And a lot of it comes from gaming, social media, right? These are all platforms these criminals are able to get in touch with these people from. Now, of course, like I said at the beginning, this is not designed to be a doom and gloom presentation. This is what identity theft looks like, who it's affecting, right? What it's going to look like in the future. But what we want to do is we don't just want to scare everybody about how bad this can be. We want to share with you some protection strategies. So the first thing I want to talk about is just a few items you all should know when it comes to identity theft. And believe it or not, this comes as a surprise to people, but believe it or not, paper is still a threat. Paper makes up still for about 50% of data breaches. A lot of it has to do with the fact that people aren't disposing of their documents correctly. They're not keeping track of the documents being sent to their homes. So what we wanted to do is provide you all a resource. It's our USPS Informed Delivery. This is an app you can get. You can get it online. You can simply sign up on their website. What this is going to do is it's going to notify you of any mail you'll be receiving in the coming days. So before that mail even ends up in your mailbox, you know what to expect when you go out to your mail in the next few days. What's good about this is if you know you're receiving any type of important tax documents or utility bills, you know to keep an eye out for this. Now, if you don't find it when you go to the mailbox, it could be one of several things, right? Your spouse may have come into the house before and taken the mail and it's sitting in the counter for you, right? It may have been delivered to the wrong address. It happens to me all the time in Philadelphia. I take the mail, I walk it down to my neighbor's house. But it can also be mail fraud, right? There are still people going through trash. There are still people going through people's mailboxes in order to obtain documents with information on them. So it's important to realize that even in this cyber world we live in, paper is still a threat. Now, when it comes to those documents, we actually put together a list of a couple of must shred items. And a couple of these items made a lot of sense to me the first time I saw it, but some of them actually stood out a little bit. Right, when I thought about documents that needed to be shredded, I knew they were utility bills or credit offers or anything that would have my information on them. But things like your resume, right? Think about the information that's on your resume. It's your name, address, phone number, email, every place that you've worked, your hobbies, your skills. Another one I like to point out is pet medical documents. You might think that's funny, but it's really not the case. If you think about what's on your pet medical documents, again, it's your name, address, phone number, email, but it's also probably your pet's name. And the reason I emphasize that is all of you think about it. How many passwords have you used that is your pet's name, right? So if somebody is rummaging through your mail and they find a pet medical document and they find that your dog Max, that's his name, they might try that as a password for one of your accounts, right? So it's important to realize a lot of these documents on here, they should be disposed of correctly. You can do this many of ways. If you have a paper shredder, great. If you don't, typically what you can do is hold on to the documents, and companies like Staples provide you an opportunity to go into their buildings and use their shredders. You can provide them your documents that will shred them for you. And I know sometimes there will be shredding events in communities, which are great. The community comes together, they shred those personal documents. So when it comes to receiving this stuff in the mail, just keep it in mind. Is it something that you would be okay with a stranger having in their hands? Or is it something that you would rather shred? Now, obviously, a lot of this identity theft does not just come from paper, right? That's only about 50% of the case. The other 50% of the case is the cyber world, right? So what I want to give you all is another resource when it comes to the cyber world. What we have here is a website called haveibeenpwned.com. The website is right there, underlined in blue. And what this website is essentially some background on it, is a very smart individual from Silicon Valley essentially created a database of all the data breaches that have ever occurred. And essentially what this website allows you to do is input either your email or your phone number. And once you input your email or your phone number, it's going to scan through the database and notify you of every data breach that your email or phone number was found in. Right, so what I would highly suggest is take a visit to this website, put your email, put your phone number in there, find the data breaches that you were a part of. I did this myself on an old junk email I had years ago, and I found that I was actually a part of 17 data breaches, some of which companies I had never associated with. Which will get to a point we talk to eventually, is that a lot of these companies are sharing data with each other. But this is what I would do: is if you put your email or phone number in on a website and you find that you have found data breaches, the next step you should do is visit those websites and immediately change your login information, your username, your password, right? So even if the data was leaked, it gives you the opportunity to reset a lot of what it takes to get into your account. But a really good resource to use, right? It's taking all the data breaches, gives you the opportunity to find out what information on you is already out there. Now, it doesn't just stop there. We know when it comes to the cybersecurity world, phishing and smishing are a big thing. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with phishing. For those of you who have worked in corporate America, you've probably done trainings on this, where you get an email. If you click on the link, you might need to end up taking a training, or if you've reported it, great, maybe you've earned some brownie points from your boss. But we also have smishing, which is just the ugly cousin of phishing, right? Phishing is emails. Smishing is text messages. It's happening so frequently, they've actually coined a term for it, ladies and gentlemen. It's happening very frequently, and we have some examples on the board from PayPal, from Netflix, but we also have a text message here, right? On the East Coast, we use Easy Pass, for example, when it comes to moving up and down the turnpike. Just the other day, I received a text message from Easy Pass saying I had an overdue statement. I had something, a payment that I had to make to them. Now, I thought this was a little fishy. I actually shared this with a friend of mine who does not have Easy Pass, and believe it or not, he also received a text message, which I found to be weird. If you don't have an account with Easy Pass, why would they be telling you that you owe them money, right? Now, what I want to emphasize here, ladies and gentlemen, is if you open the email or you open the text message, it's okay. It's the link or any sublinks in those messages that are dangerous. If you open it up, it's okay. But if you click on the link, that's when you've opened up a door for these criminals to get access to your data, or in some cases, even be able to track your live location. That's right. People are able to see where you all are at all times of day, in some cases, if you click on these links. Now, if you do receive a phishing email or a text message that looks legitimate, still do not click on the link. What I would emphasize is make a phone call to these companies. For example, Netflix. If I got this email that addressed me as high customer, well, I have a Netflix account. Not only do they know my name, they know all the TV shows I'm watching. They know who I am. So why would they not address me as Hi Steve, right? That's a red flag right there. Another red flag is if they're telling you to act urgently. Hey, you need to pay this immediately, or there might be a warrant out for your arrest, or we might have to file charges, right? These are all red flags. If you see an email like this that looks legit, what I would do is contact the company directly. You can simply go to Google, find their customer service phone number, call them, and you're going to do one of two things. First and foremost, you're going to confirm if this is a real notification. And second of all, you're also notifying the company that a phishing or smishing scam is going on, which allows them to now notify other people in the company that in their organization that they can help as well. I mean, who I think did you have a question? Did you want to hop in for a second or?
Yeah, can you hear me? Oh, you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so this is that anecdote I was going to tell I told you about earlier,
Yeah.
where I fell prey to a situation just like this last week, where we were getting bombarded with requests for 1099s and tax documents and things like that, where I saw an email come from a client, a legitimate client. It was their exact email. And so I clicked on the PDF file, and about within 10 minutes, I got a call from our IT department, right? And unfortunately, when I get a call from the IT department, it's not, hey, Mehul, how are you doing? All this kind of stuff. It's, as soon as I saw it, I'm like, I knew I did something wrong. But we have an IT department that takes care of us. And my laptop went into lockdown for 2 hours. But you know what, Stephen, what should have gave it away for me is that although the email was legitimate, the address was legitimate. It's from a client that hadn't. It was the son of a client that we had not heard from in a long time. That I should have questioned that, and if I would have been more proactive and called him about it before clicking on the PDF, what ended up happening is the client or the son called us a couple hours later and told us that his address book had gotten hacked, and he was just spending time during that day calling everyone in the address book and letting them know. Unfortunately, it was too late. But again, you've got to be vigilant in keeping at uh, all this so you don't get infected unintendedly.
Yeah. No, well said. And to echo your comments, it's always very important to read like a lot of these red flags are they're either not addressing you correctly, something in the email doesn't make sense. Sometimes their names show up as emails or there's misspellings or something happens that you need to act urgently. These are happening more and more frequently. So if you ever feel something in your gut or if there's something there that just doesn't make sense, it always makes the best action is to make a phone call to that individual to double check. Because to your point, Mehul, right? A lot of these people, a lot of these messages you get are just from the effect of somebody else having their identity stolen. Right, so phishing and smishing is a big one. The other things we all want to know about is our smartphones, right? The smartphone situation. A lot of us have these smartphones, and in some cases, in most cases, these smartphones know more about us than we know about ourselves, right? My smartphone knows where I am, when I wake up, what apps I visit, how long I visit them, who I call, who I text, right? They know all of this information. And while this is both a good thing and a bad thing, it can be a good thing because it helps the efficiency of our devices, right? It helps our devices work better with us. But that information in the wrong hands can be a really big issue. So it's important to know that your smartphone is keeping track of your location. It is keeping track of your microphone and your camera and your Bluetooth connections, right? So it can help you in terms of efficiency of the device, but in the wrong hands, that information can really hurt a lot of people. And what's happening is a lot of our smartphones, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, the apps on our phones, the devices are talking to each other, right? We might find that from time to time, Instagram talks to Facebook or Safari talks to Instagram or Twitter or whatever it might be, right? We look something up or we talk about something and all of a sudden those options are showing up to us on our social media accounts. A lot of that has to do with the fact that data is constantly being shared. And a really good story we have to share about this is GMC. For those of you who have a GMC vehicle, maybe you heard about this, maybe it's something you're a part of. But what we would share with you is just a brief story about how this can affect you all, right? So what GMC did about a year and a half or a year, 2 years ago, is they offered a promotion to new vehicle buyers. They said, hey, if you come to GMC and you buy a car, we're going to offer you a promotion. It comes with a free app. I'm going to emphasize free app. We'll get to that in a moment. It was a free app that came with the purchase of the vehicle that said, hey, if you buy a car, we give you this app. And what this app does is it allows you to turn your car on, right? Check the odometer, the gas, turn your AC on, turn your heat on. These were all fantastic features. People were excited about them. They came in, they bought their GMC car. It wasn't until about a year later that people started receiving weird mail. What they were getting is from their insurance carriers, either double or tripling their premiums, in some cases, denying coverage altogether. Now, when people had saw that they were receiving these letters, they said, well, this doesn't make sense. I never got in an accident. I didn't get any speeding tickets. How could my premiums be going up? How am I being denied coverage? So what they did is they called up their insurance carriers, and their insurance carriers said, well, we got data stating that you are a dangerous driver. We got this from a company called LexisNexis. And at this point, they said, well, how did this happen? How did they obtain data that I was a bad driver? So what they did is they called GMC and they said, hey, what's going on? I heard that their information is coming from this application. And what they found is that app that was a part of that promotion was connected to something referred to as the black box of the vehicle. Now, what that black box was doing was letting you turn the car on, your AC, your heat on, but it was also keeping track of very quick acceleration and very quick stops. So we'll use an example. If you're pulling out of your driveway and your neighbor's dog comes running out, you're going to slam on your brakes, right? And I would tell you you're a good driver for that because you avoided hitting a person or a dog. But the black box doesn't have cameras. All the black box is registering is that you stopped too quickly. And what that black box was doing, it was selling that data to LexisNexis. LexisNexis was saying, hey, we're seeing a lot of really hard stops. Maybe you're a dangerous driver, giving that to the insurance company who would, as a result, increase your premiums. Now, when people called GMC and asked them about this, their response was pretty frightening. Essentially, what they said is, we had no idea what LexisNexis was going to do with this information. And the reason I emphasize this is a lot of it has to do with the fact that the promotion was free, right? I always emphasize this to people. If you are not paying for the product, you are the product. Your data is the product. Nothing in this life is free, ladies and gentlemen. If it is free, there is a hidden cost somewhere. So what I would suggest is always make sure you're taking a look at that fine print. If you go into those terms and conditions, it's very easy. You can control F, look up data, and it'll show you all the parts of that agreement that talks about what they're going to do with your data. So just a perfect example of how little we know in regards to the data and information that's being shared with individuals. Now, what I want you all to do now is this is where things are going to become a little more interactive. I would like you all to actually, believe it or not, take out your cell phones. It is okay. I won't be offended by this. What I want to do is show all my Apple iPhone users a few things that they can do with their cell phones. We're going to talk about location services. First and foremost, if you pull out your iPhone, you're going to go to the settings app. It's the gray one with the gear. And when you get to settings, scroll down a little bit and go to that privacy tab. Once you click on privacy, up at the top, you'll see location services. This is going to give you a list of every app on your phone that is tracking your location. It's going to give you three options: always track, only when I'm using the app, and never track. If there are applications on your phone that are requesting to use a location, we'll give you a couple of examples. Things like Google Maps or Uber or Lyft probably need to know where your location is, right? They want to give you GPS coordinates, they want to know where to pick you up. But if your horoscope app, for example, your zodiac sign app, right, you go on there to find out what your horoscope is for the day, is requesting your location, there is no reason why your zodiac app should have access to your location, right? So it'll give you the ability to go through all of the apps on your phone that are requesting your location and give you the ability to either turn it on or turn it off. I don't want to continue to go through slides, but if there are questions, if you would like me to repeat this, I can always go back. But I also want to share with you disabling data tracking, right? The idea that your phone is talking to each other, right? You can go onto your phone, same place, settings, privacy, and right below location services is tracking. You can find out all of the apps on your phone that are tracking your data. Now, in some cases, this might be okay. You might be all right with Safari and Instagram talking to each other. But if that is not something you want, what you can do is you see that button on the right hand side. If you turn that to gray and you turn it off altogether, that will turn off data tracking for all of your applications. If you choose to leave it on, that's fine. You can scroll down and choose the apps that you would like to track your data. It's okay. Sometimes it's all right that some of our data is being tracked. It's just important to remember that if this information ends up in the wrong hands, that's where it can be a problem. You can also review your app privacy report by going to the same tab, privacy, and up at the top, you can turn on your app privacy report. It will tell you how often these applications are tracking your data, in some cases, exactly what they're doing with your data, right? So just the primary settings you want to keep in mind is go to settings, go to privacy, and just spend some time messing around with that tab to get an idea of exactly what your phone is tracking on your iPhones. Now, if you don't have an iPhone, it's okay. We didn't forget about you. You probably have an Android, so we have a slide for you as well. Androids allow you to enable two-factor authentication, which we'll talk on shortly. It also allows you to edit app permissions, disable personalized ads, and enable automatic updates. I would highly suggest everybody on this call enable automatic updates. Like I said from the beginning, these criminals are constantly perfecting their craft. We want those automatic updates to be turned on because these companies are also constantly updating their security measures. So if you have automatic updates turned on, you will automatically receive the best level of protection that that company is offering at the time. So there are just a couple of things that you all should know to be keeping an eye out for. Now what we want to talk about is just a couple of things you should be monitoring, the accounts that you should be keeping a sharp eye out for. First and foremost, your social media accounts, right? We talked about the individuals who use social media more frequently are more likely to be victims of identity theft. It's because think about what you post on social media. It's your pictures of yourself, your favorite vacations. You might be checking into restaurants, sharing photos of your pets, your friends, your family, right? You are voluntarily giving up information on yourself. The first thing I would do, ladies and gentlemen, unless Justin Bieber or anybody else who is a celebrity is on this call, your profile should be private. There's no reason why anybody in the world should have access to your personal information that you choose to post on social media, right? So first and foremost, make sure your accounts are private. The second thing I would do is double check that you have a strong password. We'll talk more about passwords shortly, but make sure that it's a password you're not sharing with any other accounts, right? Because once somebody's able to get into your account, they have access to change these things, right? So the more you post on social, as long as you're private, you're going to reduce a lot of that risk, as well as having a stronger password. Another big thing, believe it or not, is romance scams are happening more now than ever, especially with artificial intelligence, right? Some red flags you should be looking out for is if your partner is somebody you've never met, They are looking for you to act urgently. They are trying to separate you from the rest of your family, as in they'll never understand the love that we have, or they'll never understand our circumstances. These are all red flags, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of people do fall into these romance scams where they've never met the individual, but end up losing a lot of assets. The golden rule here, ladies and gentlemen, is if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, right? So always double check those sources, confirm you are speaking to who you think you are speaking to. Imposture fraud. We will hear more and more about this every single day, especially with the advancements of artificial intelligence, the ability to deep fake, right? Use the likeness of somebody and transform it onto ourselves. Imposter fraud will continue to rise as the years goes on. Think about this as somebody pretending to be a loved one or pretending to be a government official trying to get money out of you, right? Saying, hey, I'm stuck in this location. I need you to send me money now. Or, hey, I'm a government official. You owe us taxes. You have to pay us now or you're going to jail, right? These are all red flags. If you're receiving phone calls or messages from these people, if you have that gut feeling that something's not right, hang up the phone, right? They will find other ways to reach out to you if this is a legitimate concern. Another big one is peer-to-peer payments. I know a lot of people on this call might use Apple Pay, Cash App, Venmo, Zelle, right? Let me ask you this, ladies and gentlemen. If you were to take a picture of your credit card statement, would you post it online? Probably not. That would be asinine for you to do, right? And that's exactly what we're seeing on the screen. Somebody who has a public peer-to-peer payment system. We can see who they're paying rent to, who they're going on trips with, what snacks they're eating, and who they're sharing it with, right? You would never post your credit card statement. You want to make sure your peer-to-peer payment systems are private. You also would want to, I would challenge you all to go on your phones and password protect these apps. Because a scary story to share with you all is there was a man in a parking garage and he saw a woman who approached him and said, Sir, I locked my keys and my phone in my car. I need to call my husband. Can I use your phone? Well, the man unlocked his phone, gave it to the woman, and the woman appeared to have made a phone call. It didn't take until tomorrow, the next day, to find out that that man had lost $1,000. The woman took his phone and Venmoed herself $1,000 out of his bank account. And what happens here, ladies and gentlemen, is if when you call these companies and say, "Hey, I didn't mean to send this to that person," they're probably going to come back to you and say, "Well, where's the proof? Did you unlock your phone? Did you give your phones to these people?" Right? So anybody who has your phone in their hand has the ability to access these apps. I would highly suggest you password protect them. You can hold in the app. It'll give you a list of options, right? Delete the app, hide it from your home screen. It will also ask you to use Face ID or create a password to get access to. Another big one is credit reports. Ladies and gentlemen, once upon a time, if you wanted a credit report, you had to make a hard inquiry. You probably had to pay for it. It affected you negatively. That is not necessarily the case anymore, right? We have annualcreditreport.com, which gives you as many credit reports as you would like at no cost without that hard inquiry. It allows you to get and check your credit report as frequently as you would like. What I would do is I would create a practice of doing this at least once a quarter, right? This is your financial transcript, ladies and gentlemen. If you can keep an eye out on what's happening on your financial transcript, you can stay ahead of any type of fraud that might be occurring. So a great way to monitor your accounts. But here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. If you've done everything we talked about in this presentation today and something has still happened to you or a loved one, that's all right, because the next thing we're going to talk about is a couple of defense mechanisms you can use. And first and foremost, it's the first line of defense. It's using good passwords. And there are three ways to make sure you're following that password etiquette. It's secrecy, complexity, and variety. Nobody should know your password. You should also make sure you're keeping it complex, right? Using uppercase, lowercase, different characters, numbers. And you also want to make sure you're keeping a variety of them, right? You should not have the same password for one account that you have for all the other ones. Because, like I said, these criminals, this is their career. This is what they do. If they find out that one password works for one account, they have the time in their day to try it on every other account they can get their hands on. Right, so a perfect example of a good complex password is jelly22fish-10, right? This is gives you the uppercase, the lowercase, the numbers, the characters. Now, I would suggest you all use this password, but I won't because I'm clearly advertising it as a password, right? I would not suggest anybody use this for their actual passwords, but to use something similar to it, right? Now, if passwords aren't enough, we still have multi-factor authentication. What multi-factor authentication does is it provides a second line of defense. It's so effective, it actually blocks 99.9% of automated attacks. And it does really one of two things, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, it confirms you are who you say you actually are. It also works as a notification system to let you know, hey, somebody's trying to get into your account. If you receive an email or a text message from multi-factor authentication that's not you, it's probably a good time to go and change that password. And then, of course, credit monitoring, right? You got a good password, you have multi-factor authentication. Now you want to make sure you're monitoring your credit report. You can do this through many ways. There are a lot of apps on your phone that will do this for you. I use LifeLock. This is not an advertisement. I just know it to be a very good resource that provides me updates on my credit and lets me know anytime something's happening with my credit. So a great way to keep monitoring those situations. Now, for those of you, ladies and gentlemen, who do this monitoring, the next best thing you can do is freeze your credit. If you, anybody on this call, is not buying a house, getting a new credit card, or buying a car in the next few days, there's no reason why your credit should be open. You should be freezing your credit, right? If you don't need it, it doesn't need to be open. It does not affect you negatively either, right? You can freeze your credit. It won't affect your credit score. Now, if you choose to freeze your credit, I would highly suggest doing it at all three credit bureaus. For example, I purchased a car last year and they only checked with two of the three credit bureaus. Now, if I called TransUnion and froze my credit, then went to buy a car to find out that they're only checking with Experian or Equifax, well, just because I froze my credit at TransUnion doesn't mean they can now use these other credit bureaus to open an account. So it's important if you're going to freeze it at one bureau, make sure you're freezing it at all three. And they make it very easy. You can download their apps, you can call them. They'll be very friendly and more than happy to freeze your credit for you. And when it comes time to unfreeze it, they will actually also ask you if you would like them to automatically refreeze it when you are done using it. So a great ability for you all to keep your credit safe and your identity safe just simply by freezing your credit as a whole. Right, so we talked about a lot of things in this presentation, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, we talked about just what identity theft looks like today. If any of you on this call think that you haven't been affected yet, sure, that might be the case. But like I said, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. But at this point, we know the things to look out for, right? We know to be looking out for those paper threats, the websites we can use to identify what information is already out there on us. We know the things we should be monitoring, like our social media, our credit reports, and we know how to defend ourselves. Passwords are the first line of defense, ladies and gentlemen. Then you have your multi-factor authentication and the ability to check your credit report for free as often as you would like. A great way to monitor and defend yourself on a daily basis. So with that being said, those are the points we have to share with you. We're very excited, obviously, to share this information with you, but I know typically a lot of questions come from this. I would love to open it up to any questions that anybody have at this point. Wes, I can kick it back to you if you want to, if there's any questions in the chat, of course.
Thank you so much, Steve. We greatly appreciate all the insight that you provided us.
Yeah,
A lot of it, we always say cybersecurity, it's unfortunately never ending. And these hackers, these scammers are only getting smarter and smarter and more advanced on a daily basis, essentially. So it's always good to stay updated with the latest and greatest ways just to be as least susceptible as possible to these unfortunate bad people. So if there aren't any questions, we have the Q&A box, but just one of them. I know you had spoken about it with the multi-factor authentication. Some things that I've heard include, there's text message two-factor, email two-factor, and then the authenticator. So some people have their preferences. Do you have a preference in yours of which one you would advise or recommend people to use the most if they have the option?
Absolutely, Wes. Great question. There's a lot of different versions of multi-factor authentication that you can use, and I'll move it to our thank you slide here. But I typically use my phone number. My phone number is a big source of multi-factor authentication because we're always on our phones. We're always receiving text messages. It's an immediate response that we see. And people, while spoofing is a thing, right? People can get close to your phone number or close to your email, right? We run into a lot of things that look like we recognize the number. Nobody can actually copy your phone number. Your phone number is always going to go directly to your cell phone or anything you might have iCloud logged into. It's important to know that the text message, for me personally, has always been the best resource to use for multi-factor authentication.
Okay, fantastic. So, but anyway, that's I don't think we have any questions, but thank you again, Steve. We appreciate everyone's time this evening. And just one thing I think we do
Yeah,
have a
no.
question that popped up. Oh, yeah. Someone was wondering if we are able to get a copy of the slides for this evening.
I get that question all the time, my friend. Yes, absolutely. What I can do is, Eleanor, I can have these slides sent over to you, and if you have any clients who are requesting a copy of the slides, we're more than happy to send them out. Yes.
Thank you, Steve. We appreciate that.
Thank you. And then, yeah, one last thing for everyone that's still on the call. Thank you so much for taking the time on this wonderful spring evening. And just on the topic of all this security, cybersecurity, and just, getting rid of these documents in a safe, secure way, we will be, please be on the lookout for an email notification in the coming couple of months. We plan on having a summer shredding event here at the office in Southfield. So, that's where you can bring all those years old of tax returns, all these statements that I know that you get bombarded by from your investment accounts, transaction histories, and then we'll also take it one notch further and include electronics. That original Mac computer you might have had from the early 2000s. We're going to make it easy and safe to have you dispose of that in a way that is going to be secure, because we know that it's not the easiest thing to get rid of, and you want to obviously make sure it's in the right hands, and then we will make sure of that. So until then, we hope that you found this educational. And one thing I will add is if there's any topics that anybody thinks that they would like to get more information on, whether it's cybersecurity or within financials, we are open to any suggestions because we want to continue to provide educational material to clients and their friends and family as well on an annual basis. So thank you to Prudential, Steve, Duncan, as always, for your time and knowledge for everyone. And I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.